Raise your hand if you have ever had a bad boss before. For those of you who do not have your hand raised, raise your hand if you know of a friend or family member who has had a bad boss before. So we have all experienced the toll that having a bad boss can have on us or those around us. Not so great, which then tends to lead to attitudes like this. My boss, whispering into my coffin. You haven't submitted your timesheet yet. Or this one. My morning commute takes anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours, depending on traffic and how long I decide to sit in my car before going inside. What I am here to talk to you about today is how the leader of your organization can positively shape and influence the culture of your workplace by building what I call a people-centric team, investing in your employees, knowing your employees, and caring about your employees. And why is this important? A positive workplace culture can positively impact your entire organization. A positive workplace culture attracts world-class talent, impacts organizational alignment, and can affect the overall productivity of your business. Important stuff. So let's jump in. 94% of employees say that they would stay at their current employer longer if it's solely invested in their learning and development more. Professors and researchers at the UK Institute of Work Psychology ran a study that totaled 308 companies over 22 years. Their conclusion? Empowerment and extensive training accounted for a 9% value increase per employee. Per employee. This is huge. In grad school, I will never forget a blog that I came across from an ex-McKinsey & Company consultant. He talked about how he had a boss that he would give his proposals to. The boss would briefly glance over it, give it back to him, and say, "Great, I look forward to presenting this." He was shocked how this boss did not micromanage his work or give extensive criticism, but solely believed he had hired the best talent to bring their best to work every day. He went on to discuss how empowering this was, not just for him, but for those around him. If you believe that your employees are bad and will continuously mess up, then you will never be able to genuinely trust your employees. And if you are never able to genuinely trust your employees, then you will never be able to give them the freedom that they need to reach their full potential. And then this will lead them to feeling trapped. What else can make employees feel trapped? Office space. 2 Harvard researchers conducted a study with 2 groups of employees from Fortune 500 companies. They did this through the process of transitioning them to open office spaces. When they did this, they found a 70% decrease in face-to-face time. This may seem strange, but the employees said that they found a less desire to partake in innovative and creative conversations when constantly feeling like they had to converse with the people next to them. Now, I have yet to find the perfect formula for the ideal office space, but I will say that a little can go a long way, and it is possible to cater to each individual employee that also benefits the whole entire team. For example, there was another Fortune 500 company that participated in a similar study, and they wanted 2 departments to collaborate more. And they found that setting up a coffee station in between 2 of the departments led to an increase in collaboration because they would have organic and natural conversations around creative ideas because their brain would disconnect and they would be able to talk freely from one another without getting interrupted into the day-to-day activities. So we will circle back around to why environment is important to a positive workplace culture. But if I haven't convinced you yet to invest in your employees, here's some more statistics to think about. Employees are 21% more productive if they find purpose in their work. Only 29% of the workforce is currently engaged right now. To extend further, 68% of employees are currently looking for a new job. And employee turnover costs an average of $30.5 billion. Yikes. So invest in your employees and know your employees. If you have never taken the time to ask your employees simple questions like this, I would suggest that you do so. And as you're going through these questions, if you are unsure or the answer is no, then I would encourage you to have open conversations and vulnerable conversations around these questions. These questions, as simple as they might sound, can help you assess the health of your workplace culture and point you in the direction that you may need to be going. So know your team and know each individual employee on your team. In 2015, Sheryl Sandberg suddenly lost her husband to heart arrhythmia. She talks about in her book, Lean In, about her grieving process and how there were many meetings when she returned to work that she couldn't get through without tearing up. But she also talks about how crucial her boss, Mark Zuckerberg, was to her feeling confident to return to work. She talks about how he not only acknowledged the pain that she was in and gave her the time off that she needed, but knew what she needed based on her personality. He was the one who would speak up in meetings and say, "No, Sheryl, I think you made a really great point there." So he acknowledged the pain that she was in, gave her the time off that she needed, but then knew that she needed a confidence booster. Going through a struggle like this, she was unsure whether she could keep doing her job. And so he helped with that. This year at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton People Analytics Conference, Marcus Buckingham talked about the responses of managers, the best managers, when asked, how much should an employee be supervised and what is the best way to motivate an employee? The best managers would respond, well, it honestly depends. That is because the best managers looked at each individual employee, knew their strengths, utilized their strengths, and then mobilized these strengths to create sufficient self-functioning teams. Knowing what your employees need results in a higher return on investment every time. This may look familiar to some of you. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It has been proven that employees, when they are brought into a new company, go through a similar process. They assess their environment, which takes us back to environment being important to workplace culture. They assess whether their basic needs are met, whether they feel safe and secure in their environment, and then they determine whether or not they feel like their coworkers and peers like them. And finally, they determine whether or not they can meet the expectations placed upon them by their boss. If at any point throughout this process they have a negative experience, they begin to look for the exit sign sooner than intended. And lastly, knowing yourself and developing yourself. If you do not take time to know and develop yourself, how are you supposed to give that energy back to your employees? Remember, knowing yourself and knowing your employees results in a higher return on investment every time. Caring about your employees. Here are some statistics from the American Institute of Stress. One of the statistics that stuck out to me the most was the 14% who said that workplace machinery had been damaged or broken due to workplace rage. And as I will be honest, as I was going through some YouTube videos of workplace rage, I chose not to include them in my presentation because I felt bad for these employees. They had already been embarrassed and exposed on a public platform like YouTube, and I did not want to contribute to that exposure and embarrassment. But I did conclude that workplace rage is academically accounted for in a lot of medical dictionaries. And in New York and LA now, the number of heart attacks that have been documented as work-related occurrences has been dramatically increasing. Stanford professor Dr. Jeffrey Pfeiffer, in his book that talks about how workplace stress can impact our physical state, he states that he looks at a workforce right now and sees tons of work-family conflict, long hours, layoffs, and enormous amounts of economic insecurity. He states, I look at a workforce and I see it as inhumane. So, Going through all of this, what are some action steps that we can take to not only build people-centric teams, but take back to our bosses and as upper management do? Upper management, put money and people into the right roles. If you are a bigger company and you have never thought about putting money into people analytics positions, I would suggest in considering that. People analytics positions has grown 287% in the last 5 years. And it takes HR and data science and combines them together to make smart and intelligent decisions for teams. And you might have an employee right now that might not be in the right role for them. They may be there because of skill set or certification, but they may absolutely hate what they are doing. As humans, we naturally lean into our passions more. And putting an employee into a position because of their passions in the long run will once again result in a higher return on investment. And asking the right questions. As we talked about a little bit ago, and knowing your employees, asking simple questions can go a really long way with your team and can lead to even deeper conversations. For middle management, I've had young professionals come up to me before and say, I feel this way at work, but I don't know how to approach my boss. Having concise and reputable research when you go to your boss, or having a solution, but having done your work with this solution, your boss will respect you a lot more and pay attention to you a lot more, knowing that you've done your own work and research before coming to them. Anonymous suggestion box. This may seem silly and very simple, but leaving an anonymous suggestion box just out for your team and letting them put little note cards in there and then taking that to your boss, even if it's negative, they cannot get mad at you because those are honest opinions that you took time to collect and bring to them. And once again, this can spark very interesting conversations that may need to have been had for a really long time. And open conversations in team building. Finally, invest, know, care. Laszlo Bock, who used to be the head of people at Google, talks about in his book, Work Roles, that when he started to go out and consult with other businesses, a common question that would get asked is, well, I'm not Google. I don't have a huge budget with thousands of employees, so how can I do some of the things that you have done? And he would say, no, you may not, but you have yourself. And caring about your employees, being kind to your employees, and taking the time to genuinely get to know your employees will always be free. And when Google started out with just a few people, we built our work culture on those principles. So I will leave you with this. Love your employees, and they will love you back. This will lead to this formula here and will result in your business and company lasting a lot longer than those who have a workplace culture where love does not exist. Thank you so much.